Welcome into episode 279 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network, presented by Justice Dental. Today's show is a very, very, very big one, breaking down the latest with 7'2" Croatian forward Zvonimir Ivisic. It is also a special Q&A edition of the show where we introduce Sources Say's KS Board Question of the Week. But before we get started, a quick message from our friends at Justice Dental. Sources Say is presented by the great team at Justice Dental. Visit one of their two Lexington locations by scheduling an appointment online at justicedental.com or by calling or texting 859-543-0700. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Justice, and their team look forward to seeing you soon. I'm your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very happy to be joined once again by the one and only Shawn Smith of Go Big Blue Country. Shawn, how the heck are you?
I am fantastic, Jack Pilgrim. How are you?
Oh, very, very, very excited for this one. We got a lot to talk about, Shawn. This was going to be just a Q&A edition of the show where we answered some recruiting stuff. Billy Richmond's coming off an official visit to Lexington. We were going to talk about how that's going. Maybe if there was an update on Big Z, we were going to talk about that. Some leftovers on Boogie Flan's visit. The latest. We were going to kind of keep it simple and get creative with some Q&A stuff. We are going to get our KS Board Question of the Week coming on, and just here in a little bit, we're very excited to bring him on. And it's a wacky question. I'm excited for you to see what it is, Shawn. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit with that one, but we're getting some movement, and it's positive movement. Thank goodness, because the last week or so, Shawn, with Big Z has been nothing but negative. There's kind of this mindset, and we've talked about this in the last couple of shows, where the longer this dragged out, the greater the chance that, A, he would find a new home. He was getting restless. He was getting antsy. He was going to go try to, get on a college campus sooner rather than later. But I feel like once we hit a certain window, it almost started swinging the other direction. And I got a couple, been working the phones all day, and I got a couple of really positive updates that I am very excited to share with the class that have me thinking that there's a chance that Cal gets this thing done. He's been working tirelessly to make it clear that he's wanted here in Lexington, that Cal is going to be the one to help him reach his professional dreams in the NBA. Don't just get restless just because you're wanting to get on a campus, you want to get classes started. Like, be patient. Let's massage this thing. Let's take a step back. And I think once we kind of got past a point of a panic maybe on both sides, I think things are the dust is starting to settle a little bit, and we're not out of the woodwork quite yet, but things are trending a little bit closer in the right direction. That has me thinking that there's probably a better chance now that he makes it on campus than he doesn't.
Yeah, and last week when we recorded, we had no idea, right? It had been a week. Now it's been 2 weeks. I love the backdrop, by the way. The Big Z jersey there behind you, the 44. I think that's perfect for this episode. And no, that would be fantastic news if it gets to that point, because I think over the course of the last week, a lot of people probably had started to accept possibly that it wasn't going to get done. The longer it went, the more concern there was. But, you dropped that today and talking about it on this episode. If Cal and Kentucky can get this done, then it makes you feel a lot better about what this roster and team can do, because it gives them depth at a position where they're just have key injuries. I mean, you've had Bradshaw out all summer. You got Ugana out all summer. You didn't want to run the risk getting into that season and getting another injury to one of those two, and then you get really, really thin. So getting him here, if it works out, it would be tremendous, and it'd be big news for this basketball program.
Yeah, and I don't know the details and the specifics. I feel like I got a little too close to the sun with the actual admissions process and some of the details that came of that. And, you don't want to air out some of the, kids' personal lives. Like, that's just not the way I operate. And I kind of feel like taking a step back in that regard is probably important. And just where it's just like, it is what it is. I think the public push helped. I think there was a real push to get that waiver, and hoping that maybe if everybody kind of puts their heads together, maybe Eli Capilouto will feel that, hey, it's probably for the greater good to make this happen. While also, I think the biggest part of this is do not let him feel that he could go somewhere else. Don't let the vultures that are circling to try to steal this kid away, don't let that, win out at the end of the day. I think there was this, let's just hold. And once we kind of cleared this immediate, immediate time frame, I think now with Cal and his staff are, it kind of reminds me in a way, Shawn, of Ugonna Onyenso, where Ugo this offseason, to start the offseason, there was kind of uncertainty about what his role would look like, playing time. People in his circle were wanting certain things for him that maybe even Ugo didn't necessarily care for. And there was so much outside noise going on with Ugo that the UK staff just said, whatever you do, just know that we love you. We have the vision for you in Lexington. We know that we're going to help you reach your dreams. Hear people out if that's what you care about. If you want to, listen to some of that outside noise, that's fine, whatever. But just know that we're always going to be here for you. We're always going to welcome you in, and we know what's best for you and your basketball future. And I think that's kind of what's happening with Big Z, where there are still national folks that are skeptical that this is going to happen. It's still a lot to get through with the admissions process and getting the visa. And this is brand new territory that Kentucky is not, hasn't dealt with, but they feel that they have at least put themselves in a position to not lose him to another program. And I think that's the most important part. We're not racing against the clock to get him into classes. You still have till mid-October to make that part happen. The concern was, he wants to get over here as soon as possible. There are other schools in his ear saying, you don't have to take another test. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. We can get you in right now, drama free. Why don't you come onto our campus and be a college basketball star? So I think we just had to clear that point, clear that threshold. And now that the dust has settled a little bit, I think there's a lot more to be excited for. And I think Z is kind of tuning out some of that outside noise and just saying, all right, the Cal and his staff are telling me to trust them. I'm going to take a step back and trust them. And I think that's where we are right now, where we're still not out of the weeds completely. I just feel comfortable saying, as of right now, Kentucky isn't prepared to lose him to another school. If this kid doesn't get in and he can't get into any college, that's one thing, but they just aren't going to let this kid go to another school and be a potential star there.
Yeah, that was the concern, right? That's been the concern for the last 2 weeks. I'll ask you this though: what kind of time frame are we working with, Jack? Is it mid-October? Like what are we working with that he has to be here if this does get done, for him to be able to get in classes, get the semester started? Somebody was asking me a couple of days ago if it was possible that he could be a mid-year enrollee guy. I don't know about that. So what is the timeline that you think Kentucky's working with here? Because it's been 2 weeks.
I think Ben Roberts with the Herald Leader did a tremendous job of kind of breaking down the actual dates and, talking to a UK spokesperson to get the, you can be a partial enrollee and still make it onto campus and be here for a partial semester and still be completely eligible from a basketball perspective. And that's why I think that kind of got lost in translation a little bit, that this has never really been a battle of, we got to get him in by this drop date or he's toast. Like that, it's never been about that. It's been about the pressure of, you can't lose him to another school. There was always flexibility on when we could get him in and what that timeline would look like. It was just about, is he going to be patient enough to get to that point? And I think that was some of the internal concern on Kentucky's side, is we just cannot let that happen. We can't let these other schools that are highly interested in our kid, this like we've talked about on several shows in the past, Kentucky has put in a ton of legwork to make this happen. They have, gone to go see him in person. They have set up countless phone calls and meetings, and you don't want to put that much in and kind of be Calipari's best kept secret and then lose him out due to a technicality. Like I think that was the frustration on their part. I don't know what the details look like in terms of, is he going to just retake the test? Is he, we've talked ad nauseum about the English proficiency exam and what that looks like. And, right now UK is its foot down and says he does not meet the qualifications in that regard, but they have made it clear that he is more than willing, more than, they're happy to let him retake it and submit qualifying scores for that proficiencies test and then move on from there like nothing happened. And I think that's probably where we are right now. I don't know the details of when that next test would be taken, if he's already taken it. Again, I feel like we were kind of flying a little too close to the sun there with the actual, like, why he failed the first one and the red flags that popped up and the admissions. And like, this is, I think, between Big Z and the academic side to get kind of taken care of. Cal and his staff just didn't want to let anything happen to where he would leave for another school. And I think they have firmly put themselves in position. There is a lot of confidence on the Kentucky coaching staff side that Big Z will be wearing a Kentucky basketball uniform this winter, not during the January semester to start the regular season.
Is that something too where Kentucky's confidence really didn't waver throughout this? Because for the last 2 weeks, we've seen a lot of panic. You had hashtag Big Z trending on Twitter. You've had fans talking about it. It's been the biggest story surrounding the basketball program for the last 2 weeks. But did you get a sense that Kentucky internally within that coaching staff and the program didn't necessarily panic, Jack, that they've had the confidence all along that this could get done, or that we would be at this same point and not really the concern was him going elsewhere? But how confident do you think they've been all along that he does enroll at Kentucky?
Whether they would tell you that publicly, I think, is different than the actual feel. I think the reason why this got so public with the details being what they are were because there was a sense of, man, we cannot let this kid get away. We earned him. There's so much excitement about Cal. Cal saw this kid on film and said, man, with the system we're running and the pieces we have around him, this could be that icing on the cake piece that, answers all those questions that we talked about with, what would this team look like without him? Is the health still an issue? What about the depth? What happens if something else presents itself down the road where, Ugo re-aggravates his foot or Aaron Bradshaw whatever the case is? They just didn't want to put themselves in that position. This was the kind of fix-all for all of that. And they got so close to the finish line, you just can't get there and then lose him because the kid can't get through a stupid English proficiency exam when he speaks 4 languages. It's like, are we really going to let all of this hard work mean nothing? And I think that's where they are right now, where they are. They feel good about where things stand. They will tell you now after the fact, I'm sure, that was never, all that drama was for nothing. We always had this under control. And that, I think part of that is, if you are John Calipari and the University of Kentucky coaching staff, you got to have that kind of confidence. You got to have that confidence that say, we were going to get this figured out one way or the other. John Calipari doesn't miss on guys that he wants and needs on this roster. And I think Big Z fits that criteria.
Well, if Cal and the coaching staff panic, then it leads to who panicking? Big Z, right? The fan base was panicking enough as is for the last couple of weeks, and rightfully so. And I still think people will be holding their breath that this does get done until we know for sure that he has arrived on campus. But it was such a good PR boost for the program when he committed, given the style of play, the fit, the rim protection, the ability to shoot the ball, the ability to space the floor and not give up defensive presence to get it. It was such a good PR bump because of the way that they played in Toronto at Global Jam. And then you start getting into this semester and you start to take maybe a negative PR bump. So hopefully this gets done. Hopefully he gets to campus. And he provides some talented depth and quality depth for this basketball team.
Yeah, and I don't want fans to take this and say, Big Z's a done deal. Check that box. He's on his way over from Croatia. It's a done deal. Like, it just, there's been so much negativity surrounding this situation, and rightfully so. I mean, again, fall semester is already here. Kids are already on campus. Actual practice starts next week. Like, it was understandable where some of that panic would come from on the fan side of things. And especially when things get so public the way they did the last couple of weeks about the admissions process and some of the small details about what was going on and, the accommodations that he needed and different things like that, where it made a lot of sense why it got so public the way it did, because, this was a really important kid. But I think at the end of the day, Cal will not lose this kid, and if it comes down to it where they just cannot get the qualifying scores necessary in, then I think that just so be it at that point. But Cal was just not going to lose this kid to another school, and I think that's where we are. And it's not a done deal. There's still a lot up in the air, but it feels good to have things trending in the right direction for a change, because it was like just such a roller coaster up, and then dropped ever so slightly since then. So that it's been an absolute whirlwind and a mess, but I'm glad that we're at least getting some sort of clarity on that. So life is good. Don't panic yet.
It's been a roller. Yeah, it's been a roller coaster all summer, though, right? Like, you get into June, we talked about the scholarships and the lack thereof that they had, players on the roster. Then you get the high of Global Jam, and then you come back down. And like I said when we had Jeff Goodman on a few weeks ago, it doesn't matter how many turns you take as long as you get to your destination and where you want to go. And if this is another one of those turns and Kentucky gets it and it's a right turn, then who really cares where we end up as long as we get where we're wanting to go? And that hopefully that is with a full roster, talented roster that Kentucky can go into this season with.
Yeah, and I don't think you could give that move anything less than an A++. I saw somebody respond that to me on Twitter. I think if Cal can get this done, I mean, he overcame a lot of freaking odds to make that happen, and the credit is absolutely deserved, especially just for the work on the staff side, where there was a lot working against them with this. And when you add the new layer of other schools wanting him and trying to get in his ear and kind of put a wedge between him and the Kentucky coaching staff, that's got to feel good if you're Cal and Orlando Antigua, Chin Coleman, Chuck Martin. Like, you got to feel really good about laying the groundwork, laying the foundation, putting in so much work, and then having that win at the end of the day. That's the goal. Let's see what happens. I'm not, all in on this quite yet. There's still some national skepticism, but it does feel good that it's not all dire. The sky is falling around the Kentucky basketball program. It just kind of take a step back and say they're trying to get this handled, and we'll see how things unfold from there. This has been the idea of this show is going to be a Q&A session, and I got some awesome questions from KS Board. We're going to bring on our very special guest very soon. I don't know if he's in here quite yet, but if not, if he's watching this, make sure he jumps in, and we'll get him on soon. But until then, let's answer a couple questions that we already had dialed up in the queue. KP Wildcat 24 says, has Shawn changed IP providers yet?
I'm in a much better place today than I was. So let's go with that. This is by far the best setup that we've had.
Yeah, we're like, you're in Lexington. You work in Lexington at the school. You're right down the street from KS office. We're like, you know what? We got Steven's fancy equipment. Why not make the most of it and have you looking good? Yeah, you look very, very nice today, Steven or Shawn.
Steven looks nice too, though.
AKA UK Swoosh says Jasper Johnson said he grew up a UNC fan. Are they a real threat? Jasper got an offer from UNC this past week. That is a school that he did grow up cheering for. I still would not bet against the Kentucky Wildcats. There's just too much pointing toward this staff. The connections run so deep. This isn't a recruitment that Cal can just kind of say, we got him locked up. Nothing to worry about, nothing to see here. And I think they know that. They're still putting in work to open the recruiting period. They did go out to Link Academy and meet with Jasper and, again, make it clear that he's wanted in 24, 25. Whenever he is ready to come, they want him. He is eligible to be a reclass guy. We had Travis Branham on last week, said that the latest kind of buzz is that he is planning on sticking in that 2025 class. I don't care when he comes personally. I think there is something to be said about him growing and developing his body a little bit, sticking one more year and just seeing how things go this year at Link. He's going to be playing on a national schedule. It's going to be really important to see where things go in that front. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this high school season goes. But I want him in a Kentucky uniform no matter when it comes. He's a terrific talent. I'm very excited. I would not bet on the UNC Tar Heels as of yet. I think it would take a complete 180 to make that happen.
No, that Kentucky connection runs deep for sure. So I think that ultimately he will end up here if that's what both sides want. and would be big, for the program, big for the state, big for Kentucky. I think it is important that Jasper goes the prep route that he's on right now to kind of see where he's at as a player. It gives Kentucky a chance to evaluate him in that environment and in that climate. So I definitely think he's a talented kid, and we'll be seeing what he does over the course of the season. I mean, he was impressive at Peach Jam. He was impressive in a workout that you and I saw maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. So we'll see what happens over the course of the next year. But if he does stay in 25 or if he comes to 24, I think he's a talented player that fits this program.
All right, Shawn, I believe our very special guest is here. Let's bring on our very first debut of Sources Say's KS Board Guest of the Week. What's going on, man? Your question was awesome. The ghost of Pete Gillen. Why don't you ask your question?
Quickly to clarify, would you like the recruiting one or the hypothetical basketball one?
You won because I really enjoyed both of them, so I want you to do both.
Okay. Let's start with, hypothetical basketball. Thank you, Coach Smith and Mr. Pilgrim, for having me on. I appreciate it. So for this hypothetical, say that you grew to 6'8". Which Cal player that has been drafted, no askew, no quad A green, get him out of here, would you feel like you have the best chance to beat in a one-on-one? First to 3, you start with the ball.
Shawn, you got to go first.
I'm going you, Jack. You always put me on the spot here.
So if I grew to 6'8", I feel like that would work. I kind of have like a Jason Tatum style of play to my game. I am a very okay shooter, like a very average shooter, but I'm skilled around the basket. I work well out of the high post in the mid range. So I feel really confident about my ability to see. I feel like Khalil Whitney is a cop out answer, but I feel like I could score on him if I were 6'8". Does height matter to who is guarding me?
Say that again. Like rephrase that. Does height matter?
So if I'm 6'8", does it matter if I have to score on Tyler Ulis at 5'9", or does it have to be somebody of equal or greater value from a height perspective?
Tyler Ulis was a pick that came to mind early. I think as a taller person, you could likely score on him. The other school of thought might be, the Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, the offensively challenged one that you might be able to luck out a stop against,
One-on-one, game to 3, I start with the ball. Give me – I'm scoring on Andrew Harrison. That's my answer. I'm scoring on Andrew Harrison. Shawn, who are you scoring on if you're 6'8"?
If I'm 6'8", I mean, Tyler Ulis was the one that came to mind just because he is the smallest in height out of all the others. But is it guys that's been drafted, or is it guys that are on a two-way deal? Like, is there any of these guys?
Guys that have been drafted was my first idea, but take it however you will.
I would take Tyler Ulis. I think I would go Ulis, and I know we've had him as a guest on here, and I'm so glad that we don't have him on here the next week, because he would cook me for this one.
But if you're able to get, like, because you were a quick trigger shooter, Shawn, in your heyday, like, I feel like all you would need is 3 quick shots, and it's.
I'm also 5'9", so that quick trigger is not going to matter if it's 6'7", 6'8".
But if you're 6'8",
I'm 6'8". That's true. Hold up here.
Yeah.
Let me rethink this. Oscar Sheboy.
Interesting answers. All right, let's go to the next part of that.
Okay. Next question, a little more recruiting in the wheelhouse here. So different scenarios that could come out of this season, the recruiting in the off season. Door A, you get VJ Edge come here. You get Billy Richmond. You get Patrick, Big Patrick, Reed, Rob, and Adu all come back, right? You got a veteran start. Door B, you get Darren Peterson, you get Jaden Quaintance, you get Boogie Fland, Reed comes back, but Rob and Adu leave, and then you kind of have to fill out the rest with transfers and a little more uncertainty. Which way you going?
Oh, man, that's a great one. I really appreciate you coming on, man. That Chase, that really great stuff. I I'm a big Jaden Quaintance guy, very, very big Jaden Quaintance guy. So I think Darren Peterson, for my money, is one of the best guards in all of high school basketball, regardless of class. So for my money, I'm betting on the high ceiling and Darren Peterson, Jaden Quaintance, and Boogie Flan. And I think Reed coming back would be awesome. And we'll talk a little bit here in a second about Boogie Flan and the recruiting behind all that. But I do think that Boogie Flan and Reed Shepherd would work very, very nicely together in a backcourt, especially with Darren Peterson there. I know you're losing Rob Dillingham. I know you're losing Adu Thero. That part sucks. But I also trust Cal's ability to land, one of those just final remaining pieces in the transfer portal. So that's my guess. Shawn, do you have a differing opinion on that one?
No, that was actually the exact way I was going to go with Peterson. If he ends up in 24, I mean, it completely strengthens the whole entire 24 class. I mean, that's a talented piece for sure. You put him there, and then you and I actually had this conversation about Boogie Flan and Reed Shepherd, that I would love the addition of Boogie Flan more if Reed Shepherd is on that Kentucky roster. I think that would be a really, really good backcourt.
And that's not no slighted VJ Edgecombe. I love Billy Richmond. Obviously, you've one of my favorite players in the class, regardless. Big Patrick, that's a new one. I'm not as high on him, especially long term, as I especially would be Jaden Quaintance and some of the other guys. I know Travis Brandon was on last week and just couldn't rave about Big Patrick enough. So that's an interesting one. And you get Reed Shepherd, Rob Dillingham, and Adu Thero back. That's very exciting. But I don't know, man. I'm betting on the upside. I'm betting on Cal to turn Darren Peterson, Jaden Quaintance, an absolute superstar. So those are my final answers, man. Thank you so much for coming on for the debut of KS Board's Question of the Week, Chase. Keep them coming. Keep those good questions coming. We'll do this every week.
Of course. Thank you both for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good stuff, man. I really enjoyed that part, Shawn.
Yeah, I did too. I thought it's a good way to engage the people that listen to the show and get them on the screen and fun questions too. Really good questions.
Yeah, it's $1 to subscribe to KS Board right now. KSR Plus, it's awesome stuff. Make sure you do that. I sent a tweet out today right after sending out my little nugget on Big Z. So go find that link. Go subscribe. You want to make no better deal out there right now than $1 for a month to get it. Try it out. See if you like it. You will like it, I guarantee you. And we'll keep these questions coming because you'll get a chance to come on this show and ask the questions to us specifically. So we appreciate him coming on and making his debut here. Let's keep rolling through some of these questions. J2 Center Field says, this may be a little open-ended, but what is UK's plan in the backcourt for next year? Only guy I'd say is coming back is Reed Shepherd. I like Boogie Flan as a role piece, but not as a main contributor. We just offered Edgecombe, but likely have to make up ground for him as UK setting themselves up for a Darren Peterson reclass, looking at transfer portal heavy. I can see it. I can at least see the plan for the front court. Ugo, Adu, Burks all back, and you get Somto as a commit, recruiting Jaden Quaintance hard. Also, if Big Z were to ever make it campus, could he come back as well? That's an interesting thing because he would not be able to test the draft waters again. So a lot of stuff going on there, and really just kind of big picture, what is the plan for 2024 and recruiting? So let's use that as a platform to talk about Billy Richmond and this visit this past weekend. I heard absolutely glowing reviews of how things went, and to the point where as of right now, the plan is to keep these visits as scheduled. He has 3 more visits on the docket right now, official scheduled, but there is some talk that maybe he has seen all he needs to see. So I don't know how quickly things could move. I've said all along that Billy Richmond is a Kentucky lean. There's just way too many connections there with John Calipari. He loves being here. DJ Wagner and Aaron Bradshaw are in his ear. They want him here as well. Billy Richmond is a guy, Shawn, that I am a really, really big fan of. I think he's a perfect fit for what John Calipari does and the offense that he runs here. For my money, he's up there among the most important guys for John Calipari's recruiting, regardless of year right now.
I agree. I think so too, and he fits the mold of the guys that Cal has got into this program over the 13, 14 years that he's been here. Are there some areas to his game that needs to improve? Absolutely. Obviously shooting is an area that needs to improve, but his ability to be a two-way guy and defend on the other end with that frame and that body, I think is probably one of the most appealing things about him. Jack, an athletic, big body, super strong, super explosive, a lot of athleticism. I think that would be a perfect addition to this class. And then, too, another thing about when Kentucky puts its recruiting classes together, it's always an advantage when you can kind of have 2 or 3 pieces in it early during that early signing period. So I think it'd be something to watch over the course of the next, 5, 6, 7 weeks as we get closer to November and that early signing date, is how many guys are in the fold early. Those have been some of the better classes. Majority of this group that's on campus now was already here and signed a year ago, or not quite a year ago, but in November. So I think that's always important too. So he is definitely one of those guys to watch.
Look, it's easy to tell what Cal is, who he's prioritizing based on watching his actions. And if you look closely, Billy Richmond's a guy that he's been all over from the beginning. Early offer extended to him, has been really working that relationship for a while. But if you watch closely at Boogie Flant, that one is really fascinating because he takes his official visit to Lexington. Literally 2 days later, John Calipari is a keynote speaker at an event, a coaching clinic held at Boogie Flant's high school that turns into a one-on-one meeting with John Calipari, and all 3 staff members were there as well. So it was like a 4-on-1 meeting with Boogie Flant individually. And then tonight, John Calipari is hosting Boogie Flant on an in-home visit, or I guess Boogie Flant is hosting John Calipari and an assistant on an in-home visit, and Cal is there at an open gym right now. Shawn, those types of moves, when you kind of stack visits on top of one another, official visit, coaching visit, the coaching clinic, and then another in-home less than a week later, when you get those types of moves and things are trending in that direction, it means something. And I think you can kind of put 2 and 2 together here to say that Cal likes what he sees with Boogie Flant. I think there's a personality fit above all else. Boogie is a flawed basketball player. He's inefficient, kind of very confident, but also that kind of works against him at times because that can result in 4 of 14 shooting performances every once in a while. But the confidence also works in his favor he can hit shots out to 30 feet. He's confident as an on or off ball guy, attacks the rim, has that kind of big New York persona that I personally love about him. I think he would embrace the spotlight really well. He's a Big Apple kid, going to Lexington, playing at Rupp Arena would not bother, those big bright lights would not bother him. Stuff like that. John Calipari likes traits like that. And if you just look at the way Cal is operating, I think if you put 2 and 2 together, I think it's pretty clear that he's looking to go for the kill there.
Yeah, that New York personality and the confidence, he certainly has it to play in this program. But you're mentioning kind of the pattern here with Kentucky, the official visit, and then now, seeing him an in-home visit. But also you can look at other schools' reactions. And Indiana, it wasn't long after the official visit, you see Indiana kind of trying to get maybe some of that momentum and things back. So it's always, to me, important not only to watch the program that just came off the official visit or what Kentucky's doing, but watch how other schools and programs are reacting as well, and those coaching staffs. So clearly Kentucky is in a pretty good position right now with Boogie Flant. And I told you this earlier today before we started recording, that if Reed Shepherd is on this roster a year from now, then I would love the addition of Boogie Flant even more, because I feel like as long as Boogie's not the main guy and he can slide off and play the 2, he's got the ability to shoot the ball. He has unlimited range. I mean, like you said, 25, 26, 27 feet and beyond, he's going to shoot the ball. He's got that confidence. I think that confidence and that style is better suited if you have someone that's a veteran piece to play that role in the backcourt. And then I still expect this roster to kind of go a little bit heavier on the transfer portal a year from now, depending on how many guys on this current team return. We know that's still an option, but I expect Kentucky to kind of mix in the portal a little bit more next year in the spring than what they have the last 2 seasons.
It's kind of like what we are seeing with this current recruiting class and how the playing style kind of came to be in Toronto, and what the big vision I think with this roster is right now, where each individual talent you could kind of poke holes in and say, well, DJ is not going to be a 40% 3-point shooter. Rob Dillingham's inefficient. Justin Edwards, was a little stiff at times. You could go through each individual guy and point out flaws, but if you look at them as a sum of all parts and see how they work together as a group and the cohesiveness there and the style of play, they kind of, maximize the strength and minimize the weaknesses. That's kind of the goal with all this. So as you said, if you could get Reed Shepherd back and kind of have him be the guy, he's already kind of exceeding every expectation right now. If you can get him back for year 2 and have him emerge as, kind of the face of this program going into a sophomore season, and then have Boogie Flan do what he does best, but don't make him take 20 shots a game. Let him kind of just do what he does best without having the ball in his hand every single possession. I think that helps. And if you get a guy like Darren Peterson or a VJ Edgecombe, they just offered him this past week. If you can kind of build that class around him with a Jaden Quaintance, athletic freak, if you can kind of do that and go step by step with this, and if you look at it as a total unit, you can see the vision there. And that's something that I missed. I will absolutely admit that I missed last summer when we were talking about this, or not last summer, but going into the spring, having individual concerns about each of these guys that Cal was signing and going, man, I just don't know if I see it. And then kind of seeing the vision come to fruition in Toronto, you go, my bad, I was wrong. Freely admit I was wrong. Well, I think we could see something similar with 24.
And the style of play goes into kind of you having that change, right? That change of approach to how you view this team. And we had the benefit, Jack, of actually seeing these guys in action. I know it was at Global Jam. I know it's different competition than what they're going to be seeing in the SEC or in the Champions Classic against Kansas, but getting to see those guys kind of ease some of those concerns. But it's the way that they fit together. I think you made a perfect point. Maybe moving forward, I look less at flaws with each one of these individual players and start looking at, okay, how do they fit alongside the other guards in this class? How do they fit alongside the bigs? And then you kind of look at this class as a whole. And as long as Kentucky's going with this style of play and it fits what Kentucky's doing and plans to do this season, now it remains to be seen, right? Like we know we saw it in Global Jam. I hope we see it in the Champions Classic in November, and I hope we see it moving forward throughout the season, that Kentucky commits to that more open style, especially on the offensive end of the floor. And if they do that, I think you could see their recruiting kind of reflected as well, that they're wanting to transition and kind of stay with that 4-out, 5-out approach.
Absolutely. Go back to the question feed on KS board. Connor Rigg says, do you think it's a realistic possibility that Rob Dillingham returns for a sophomore season? I think that's going to be one to monitor closely, because physically he's not there yet. I mean, heard it from Cal himself that he left Toronto saying, I didn't like the way I wasn't able to get to my spots. I was, the physicality was working against me in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I know it's going to be even worse during SEC play. And yes, he added some weight. He, all the way up to 177, coming in, $155 dripping wet. Like, he's actively working toward that, but will he be ready to actually make that jump to the NBA in 8 months? I think that's a bigger question. I am rooting like hell for a sophomore season of Rob Dillingham as he adjusts to the physicality and he gets bigger and stronger and, adapts to that structure of Kentucky basketball. I think he would be tremendous as a sophomore here. And I think it might springboard him to the NBA a little bit better, that sophomore campaign. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Do you think that there's a chance that we could see year 2 of Rob Dillingham?
I do. I do think there is a chance that you see him. And obviously, to me, with Rob this year, Jack, it's, do you listen to the noise? And Cal talks about it a ton. There's always going to be the clutter from the outside. There's always going to be that talk. You can't listen to it. And to me, what we saw from Rob in Toronto, you and I talked about this when we hosted KSR at Peach Jam, was the difference in the mindset and the things that we were hearing about Rob Dillingham since he'd arrived on campus. We also got to see that same approach. I got to see Rob being a really good teammate. And not saying he's ever been a bad teammate, but it would have been easy on that trip to maybe press and feel like he needed to do more. But I don't think that he did that. And the good thing about playing basketball in July is it exposes you, but it exposes you when it doesn't necessarily matter. The results of that trip did not matter. He had now 3 or 4 months to get in the gym, work on his body, work on his game, get himself ready for November. He's going to have another period here with that non-conference schedule to see where he stands. And then I'm hopefully that Rob Dillingham is so good as a freshman that he helps Kentucky. They win a national championship. They go to a Final Four, and then you send guys on, you bring the next group in. But if not, or even if they do win a title, without Rob at his best. You get sophomore Rob, because if you can have a backcourt a year from now that has sophomore Rob Dillingham and sophomore Reed Shepherd, you add a Boogie Fland in there, you add some of these other pieces, maybe you go get a veteran from the transfer portal that's a shooter. I really would like that backcourt with where Kentucky stands a year from now. But a lot has to happen between now and then, but you can at least see a possibility that it could play out that way. It's never safe to assume at Kentucky, though. It's never safe to assume in college basketball, period. But I could see it.
Yeah, I like you can kind of be selfish both directions a little bit, where if Rob Dillingham comes back for a sophomore year, you get another year of fun. You get another year of the electricity. You get, all that. But if you don't get a second year of Rob Dillingham, it means things went really, really well. It means things went the way they were supposed to. You don't want to root for a second year of Rob Dillingham. But just for me physically, I think it would do him wonders, and it would do, him wonders in the long term for his pro potential. Because I think a second year of him where maybe he does take, right now it's going to be DJ's team. Maybe next year he takes that step up and it's his team. And I think that'd be really intriguing to see how that unfolds. I think selfishly, I think getting a second year out of him would do wonders, and I'd be really, really excited about that. But if you don't, it means things went really, really well. And I'm just as excited about that possibility too.
Yeah, and there's a number of scenarios that could play out, right? Like injuries and things like that, the things that we don't want to discuss. We have no idea what these roles are going to look like come December, and things like where does Rob fit? Does Rob just play his way into the starting lineup? Is Rob so good that you can't put him on the bench? Does Rob struggle a little bit in non-conference, but then get it right in conference? We know we're going to have those storylines. But I think that this backcourt is significantly undervalued. And I think that is probably the most frustrating thing about where you see Kentucky at in some preseason rankings for some others.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't top 20 in college basketball.
It's not, according to some networks and some people, it's not. And I just think that's crazy, because how far have we moved the goalpost here when it comes to evaluating what is a good backcourt and what is not? Because 5 or 6 years ago, the number one recruiting class would have probably had Kentucky in the preseason top 5. I like that they're not in the preseason top 5. I think that this is the first year that Kentucky can probably enter a basketball season with not crazy expectations on their shoulders. And we already know in this city, in this state, the expectations are already high enough. You don't need anything from the outside to add expectations. This program knows where it wants to go, where it needs to go, and that is to get to a Final Four international championship. But you also got Joe Lunardi. I think the last time I looked, has Kentucky as a projected 6th seed. A year ago, they were on that 1-2 line going into the season. They obviously didn't reach that. So this may be a year where Kentucky actually can outperform some of the preseason expectations. And if they do, then who cares where they're at in September?
Yeah, it's a great point. Before we get to question number 2 from Connor Rigg, it's a great one. I'm really excited to ask you about that. I do want to talk about our friends at My Perfect Franchise, Andy Luedecke. This show is, as always, brought to you by Andy Luedecke and MyPerfectFranchise.net. Andy is a franchise consultant as well as franchise owner, and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he is here to help. If you have any questions about business ownership, you can learn more and contact Andy anytime at www.myperfectfranchise.net. Shawn, second part of Connor Rigg's question. If you got the choice between getting the Boozer twins or AJ DeBansa and someone like Darren Peterson, Koa Pete, or Caleb Wilson, who would you pick and why? I have my answer. Is there anyone from that list that you are dying to have in a Kentucky uniform?
Well, I mean, obviously you get 2 with the Boozers, but
that's
AJ
kind of a trick part of that. So I didn't necessarily think about that part.
Which makes it more valuable there. But AJ DeBansa, I mean, oh my goodness, Jack. Like, me and you talked about him at Peach Jam, and I had not got to watch him in person. And you told me 2 days before we got to see him, you said, I want you to see AJ DeBansa in person with your own 2 eyes. And we weren't together at the moment. I'd been somewhere else, and you're texting me like, where are you? Where are you? And no, he was as good as advertised. He's super talented, a generational talent, has potential to be one of the better players in the NBA. I think he projects to be that at some point in his career. But if you told me that I could have one you give me AJ Debance every single time. I just think he's that good.
You think about going back to our question of the week. If you grow to 6'8", what would that look like? So AJ Debance is 6'8", and he does all the stuff that you kind of like. Well, I'm really gifted as an on ball handler, and my outside shot is good, but I'm really great at attacking the basket, and I have a nice finisher. All the stuff that you kind of just make up in your head and think that's what you are as a basketball player. Talking out of my butt earlier, like me scoring on Andrew Harrison, get the hell out of here. Not a chance. But all of those things that you think in your head, like that's who AJ Debance is actually in real life. Watching him is just so stupid sometimes because he is 6'8" and unbelievably athletic and long, and he'll dive for loose balls and do, actual winning plays. There was one play I saw where he took a bad shot and it kind of led to a quick transition the other way. It was a cross court pass and he kind of caught it like Odell Beckham behind him, and then like immediately launched it back up for a transition look to a clean layup at the rim to one of his teammates. And then he went back right down the next possession and knocked down a ridiculous fadeaway mid-range. Like he just does everything on the floor for a guy that is 6'8", 205 pounds, who, he has the frame to be an absolute freak of nature. He is everything that you dream of in a basketball player. AJ Debance is a guy that if you're John Calipari, you do anything to get him in a Kentucky uniform. I like that there are a lot of guys to like. I like Jaden Quaintance. I like, obviously the Boozer twins. That's a pipe dream. If Cal can somehow manage that, then all credit to you. But that's the one guy, Koa Pete's another one. There's Caleb Wilson. There's so many guys that you love in this, but he's above he's above love. He's one of those guys that he is a must get. If you can get him in a Kentucky uniform, do whatever it takes because he's that talented and will be a generational talent at the collegiate level and at the NBA level. He's a future first team All NBA basketball player.
Yeah, he and Cooper Flagg drew the biggest crowds at Peach Jam for a reason. Whether they were playing against each other or what, like it just individually in those moments, there was a reason people were lined up. The upper level at Peach Jam, for people that have been there, they'll understand. But if you've not, it's a track that goes around. And there were 4 or 5 deep on the upper level that's just standing room only. And when you get standing room only, there's a reason. And it was the talent that was there playing. And that goes back to, I know with Cooper it's different now, but with the 24 class and stuff, we were talking about how it was a weaker class, but then 25, 26, significantly more talented with difference-making talent that can get to the league and be some of that generational talent that you see enter the league. So that's what we're talking about with these guys and things. And it's a much better class overall from top to bottom. The talent pool, that's the thing, right? You got to rank these guys 1 through whatever. But number 10 in 2024, it might not be the same as number 10 in 2025. It's a completely different player at that number, and that's just part of it. But no, like that AJ for sure would be my pick every single time. And I enjoyed watching him and hopefully get to watch a lot more of him, maybe here at Kentucky.
Yeah, absolutely. J2 Centerfield says, could it be possible Cal has found his role players for the class in Billy Richmond, Somto Cyril, and Boogie Flan? Then he is being very cautious with who the headliners will be. I kind of like that mindset. I think
I do too.
If you build the foundation of your class with nice complementary guys, and then you could go, it kind of reminds me of when they went to go, was it Julius Randle, that class where you had everything else built up, and then you had that one final piece. If you go add Julius Randle, that's it. Not even a Jamal Murray. I think that was too late. But if you have kind of the other complementary pieces situated, then you can say, all right, Jaden Quaintance, pushing all my chips in on you. Let's make this happen. Okay, Darren Peterson, let's put all these chips in. Let's make this happen. I like that mindset, and I think there is something to be said about that.
I do too. I think that makes sense. But what if Kentucky Stars are already on this roster a year from now? Like, what if it's some guys like we mentioned, Reed Shepherd or Rob Dillingham, or how does Aduthiero develop, and some of these other players on this roster over the course of the next 12 months. And then obviously the transfer portal as well. But I think that makes a ton of sense. You get those role guys, you get those pieces, that foundation that you talked about laying. And I think Kentucky could put together a good class and then a good roster a year from now. But a lot has to move between now and then.
Yeah, absolutely. Shawn, has there ever been a time that you were stressed out buying tickets?
Yes. Not lately, though.
I know. And a big reason for that is because of our friends at Gametime. You should not have to worry when you're buying tickets. Now isn't the time for guesswork with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seats, and the best price guarantee. Gametime does all of that hard work for you. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. And even an hour after the event start, it is the place to find last minute seats, last minute deals, find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. Shawn, you have used it not once but twice since we've started this deal. Talk about how just absolutely flawless the user interface is with Gametime.
Yeah, it gets better every single time. I'll probably do a third. Might do a third before we even get before the Reds get out of Cincinnati, and hopefully get that wild card spot and get to the playoffs. I might use it again this weekend or something to watch a series. But yeah, it's the easiest way to purchase tickets. And the view from your seat, you can see it. If you don't like it, you can pick another spot, get your view from there. Kentucky, Florida coming up at Kroger Field here in a couple of weeks, a big game. Or if not, look and see if you can get Kentucky Vandy this weekend. Yeah,
there's no excuse. Kentucky football games every single weekend at this point, home or away. Then Kentucky basketball season right around the corner. Like, now is the time to invest in Gametime with us. I'm telling you, you will not regret it. Gametime guarantee means you will always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you with 100%, 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code KSR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code KSR for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. Shawn, we're coming up the home stretch, just a couple more minutes to go. We're going to try to answer a couple more questions that I had on the YouTube page. Just, they're always out in full force. We always appreciate all of their hard work. Polaric Spicer says, Rob is swelling up, and this kid really buys into the system, wanting to get better all around. Then he said, when Billy is there was a good question that he had, and I just lost it. Oh, there it is. What are the chances of Somto coming next semester, and what's the deal with Big Z? We talked extensively about Big Z the first 20 minutes of the show. Go back and rewatch that if you missed that part. But Somto is actually on record. I believe he just did an interview with the Herald Leader, where I'm actually kind of in conversations with OTE right now about getting Somto on the show very soon. So keep a very close eye out on that. That is very likely our next very special guest on the show. So we will have Somto answer that directly for you. But I believe the Herald Leader just got actual quotes on that for him, where he said, no, the plan right now is for me to stay in 2024. No reason to rush. And I think, again, having a guy like Somto in your back pocket is a tremendous, tremendous thing if you're John Calipari, where if something happens with Bradshaw, something happens with Ugo, Z doesn't get in the way you hope and are trending toward, as we've seen in the last couple of days, then you always have Somto in your back pocket to say, you know what, we got to have another body. He's a really freaking good piece to add in January if it comes to it. Right now, the plan is not to do that. Let him keep developing at OTE. They really like building that pipeline, the relationship. Orlando Antigua is literally there right now for their pro day. So a lot to like about Somto in 2024. If you need him in January, I get it. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there, Shawn. But I like him firmly in 2024 right now.
And if you need him, to me, it wouldn't be a role on the court, because we've never really seen that play out, right? Where they had a guy the second semester and he plays, or he contributes to on-court production. It would be a practice body. So I think if Big Z's here, Kentucky has enough depth in the front court. If they don't, I think they'll make it work without him. But I guess the only plus would be to get him here, get him in the system, get him in those workouts, and get him in those practices. But if not, leave him alone, let him develop, and let him be ready a year from now to join this program.
Jacob Polachek says, I'll take a starting five of Cooper Flagg, AJ DeBanza, Jack Pilgrim, Stephen Peek, and Shawn Smith. If I got those two dudes on my side, I can just kind of like stay off to the side, eat a bag of popcorn, and just like let them play 2-on-5 at that point. Like I trust Steven to get
ball screen.
Like I trust Steven to knock down a shot or two. I trust you to hit a shot or two. I'll make a free throw. I'll be a really good hard foul guy. Like I'll be tremendous at that, and just let Cooper and AJ DeBanza just go to work. I'll take my chances with those 5 shots.
Oh yeah, we'll just we'll run a little 2-man action, and just go empty side ball screen, and us 3 spot up on the other side, and just hold those help defenders. Let the other 2 do the work.
Absolutely. All right, let's have this be our very last question of the day before we get out of here. JT55 asks, in your opinion, who emerges as the closing 5 players at the end of a game this season for the Kentucky Wildcats, Shawn?
I feel like we've talked about this a few times, and I think it changes. Obviously, DJ Wagner, I think, is a closer. I think we saw that in Toronto. I think he's going to be on the floor in those moments. Antonio Reeves, when it comes to a veteran presence on the court and his ability to shoot the ball, I think he's going to be there, even if he has some defensive struggles. Trey Mitchell, to me, is enough as a veteran, I think, with his IQ, especially in the middle third of the floor with Kentucky running some stuff offensively. Reed Shepherd is another guy that I'm going to slide in there. I think that you can't definitely undervalue the presence of a trigger man that with the IQ that he has and being able to take care of the basketball and get another point guard option on the floor. I'll go those 4, and then I'll say Justin Edwards. I think that those will be the 5 to close games out for Kentucky.
I like DJ Wagner. I like Antonio Reeves. I feel pretty strongly about those 2. Give me Justin Edwards and his versatility. I really think that that's going to be a game changer for this team. And give me Trey Mitchell and Aaron Bradshaw. I'm really excited to see how those 2 will work together and how truly how complementary they will be. On paper, you think that they're a perfect fit and you could truly go a 5 out there. How seamless will that transition be for them? We'll just have to see it to believe it here in the next month or so when the season starts ramping up and we get to Big Blue Madness and all that good stuff. We will get to see it. Things are still trending in the right direction for Aaron Bradshaw. Ugo's still right on schedule to come back right on time. So you're in a good spot here, Shawn. Get Z in at whatever cost. I think that's the mindset of John Calipari right now. Get him in. I ain't going to lose you to DePaul. I ain't going to lose you to any of these other schools. Get Big Z in and let everything fall into place the way it's supposed to. And I think John Calipari very much likes his team, Shawn.
Yeah, you essentially got to win that recruiting battle twice, right? You got to get him here. You got to get him committed, get him signed, and then win him initially getting on campus. So have to win that one twice. But the question of who closes out games, I feel like that's something that we will be talking about a lot in November and in December and even into January, because I think it will change depending on scenarios late in games. Does Kentucky have the lead? Are they trailing? Who's their offensive lineup? Who's their defensive lineup? Things like that. So but it seems like John Calipari is going to have options, but we just do not know what those options are at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out Justice Deno. Shout out My Perfect Franchise, Andy Luedecke, and shout out Gametime. Shout out KS Board in our very first debut of the KS Board question of the week. It was awesome. Really appreciate him coming on and starting a regular tradition for us. It's going to be a blast. Make sure you subscribe to KSR Plus and get on KS Board, and you can ask those questions and come on with us every week. It's going to be a blast. We have a lot of fun stuff in store for the Source Say podcast, and I know fans are definitely looking forward to it as well. Shawn, let's get on out of here. Where can fans find your work? You can follow me on Twitter at GBB Country. Find me on Twitter as well, at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Reach out to me via email, jpilgrim@KentuckySportsRadio.com. With that, we'll be back next time from the Jam Pack Source to Say podcast. We will see you then.